And we are back. You are chatting with John P. Today we're going to be talking about some watches that I see quite frequently here in Miami and South Florida. I think that there's a few watches on this list that you'll all be very surprised about, and there are some others on the list that probably you could have guessed, right? Because there are only so many popular watches in the world, right? But first, I'd like to thank you for liking and subscribing and being here with me. It really is fun. It's exciting for me, and I love talking with you in the comments below, so make sure to leave some feedback there, like and subscribe, and Instagram The Real John P, where you can find a little bit about me and the day-to-day as a watch dealer here in South Florida. And also, do not forget to check out DelrayWatch.com. We just got in a Rolex Submariner Hulk. By the way, I don't see this very often in Miami because they are pretty rare and desirable now, and they're just going up. We have one at DelrayWatch.com, and we're pretty proud that we've been able to put a few of these in the inventory over the last few months for you watch geeks to look at and possibly think about adding to your collection. So let's talk about it, guys. Here in Miami and South Florida, where we have Delray Watch, and I live, and my business partner Federico lives, we go to certain restaurants, we go some places, and we're out and about, and it seems like it's a bit of a watch town. Now, I've lived here for about 4 years, and I can say that out of any other city in the United States, New York and LA included, Miami just seems to have the most watch guys. Now, they might be casual watch wearers, maybe not watch geeks like you'd find in some cities that I would probably call a little bit more sophisticated in terms of their social scenes and settings, but you do see a lot of guys and even women wearing watches, and that's pretty cool for a watch geek, a watch buff, and collector like myself. We don't have a storefront, we're only online, so we don't get to interact with too many people locally, but I'll be at Starbucks even in the morning, and I'll see guys wearing some of these watches. So I want to share here with you these watches. I think a couple of them might be surprising. So the first, let's get it out of the way, the Rolex Submariner. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily ceramic Submariner because honestly, I don't see too many of them. But, the OG, some of the original models like the 16610 and even a little bit before that, we see these. So pre-ceramic Submariners, I see them pretty frequently. Now, it's usually on a guy that's between the ages of 30 and 60, which is kind of a wide range of age, but you see it all over. You see it from a guy getting out of a Mercedes or even a Rolls Royce going onto his boat, or even just a guy that honestly works at the front desk of my building. You see them all over, and rightfully so. It's the quintessential sports watch. The next one that I think you'll probably be pretty shocked, and I'm shocked that I'm seeing this so frequently, is the Rolex Yachtmaster 40 in Everose Gold on Oyster Flex. Now, personally, I think this is a really nice watch. The Rolex Oyster Flex is Rolex's only rubber strap, and they've only got this on a couple of models now in precious metal, which is interesting considering rubber's kind of a sports watch thing. But what I'm wearing actually is on rubber today. Omega, not Rolex, Omega Seamaster Ceramic. I'm actually enjoying this quite a lot. But nonetheless, I'm seeing more and more of these Everose Yachtmasters in 40 on the rubber. I don't know what it is. I'm seeing more and more of them, and I don't know if it's becoming an alternative because the guy can't get a stainless steel sports watch, so he's getting into a precious metal, making it a little more casual by having it on that Oyster Flex. I don't know. Do any of you guys own this watch? What do you think about it? Leave in the comments below. I'd love to hear it because I'm seeing more and more of them, and I'm not totally sure why this is becoming a trend. Now, this brand, they've gone on a little bit, I don't want to say hiatus, but they're definitely on a downturn and a bit of a pullback, though in some international markets, they're still doing pretty well, and Miami is a very international city. Sometimes it feels like its own country. It's the Hublot Classic Fusion. Now, there's so many different variations of the Classic Fusion and some of the other Hublots, but generally, I would say out of all the cities in the United States, Hublot is still performing here. Now, I don't want to say that they're making a lot of sales because I just don't know. When I do go past the Hublot store at Bal Harbor, for example, I don't see too many people in there, but when I do see people in there, I could say that it certainly seems like a bit of an international clientele. And I mean nothing by that other than it seems like Hublot still sells very well with an international crowd. And I think that's interesting, but it's also interesting to note that while many guys in the United States think that Hublot has kind of died, you certainly can still see them on the wrists of many people, friends, watch collectors, savants, and even just, ladies that like a nice, diamond larger watch, which Hublot does make, that's still sporty. So Hublot's still going strong here. See him all the time. Okay, AP Royal Oak. Now, there's also several or many variations. You got the Royal Oak Offshore, and loads and loads of limited editions. But I see a fair amount of AP Royal Oaks on the wrist. Now, this one, it's a little bit tough, right? It's aside from the other watches that I mentioned here, you really have to kind of dig around. If you're a casual watch wearer, you might not be familiar with AP compared to something like Rolex, which is everywhere. If you think about a luxury watch, Rolex is a name that gets thrown around. In AP also, but in certain settings, certain social rings, I would say. When it's AP, it's much of a different, sometimes some might say a little bit of a more sophisticated social ring, and so you don't see them everywhere. But in Miami, I've noticed them, and I've noticed them more frequently. It's become more of a status piece, an icon, and I don't really see them on the people that are watch geeks, but I do see them on the people that are trying to be flashy, have their cars wrapped in bright and fluorescent colors, and put aftermarket exhaust. I'll typically see, and I mean nothing by this, but I'll see a guy that will pull up to the Starbucks, for example, and he'll have his his Porsche wrapped in some like yellow wrapper, something, like bright neon, and pull up right into the no parking lane where the fire trucks are supposed to go, and he'll just leave his car there, and he'll be wearing a Royal Oak. That's just something I've noticed. Don't hate me for it, but it is something I see. And lastly, I see Panerai Luminor everywhere. Now, I don't know necessarily if Panerai still sells very, very well in Miami, but because, in my opinion, all Panerai look the same. So if you see a Luminor from far away, you're not necessarily going to know the model. So I don't know if these guys are still buying the Panerai today, or they bought it 10 years ago when Panerai was a little bit more in demand, or if perhaps they're drawn to Panerai now and they're buying it now pre-owned because it's such a good deal, DelrayWatch.com. So I'm not sure about that, but nonetheless, I do see Panerai, and it fits the overall culture and feel and, social setting of Miami, right? Believe it or not, so many people are just going to work in t-shirts, polo shirts, usually jeans. It's a very casual city. Not a lot of people are dressing up, maybe bankers, lawyers, and doctors, but other than that, very few people are dressing up, putting on suits. It's always hot here, it's humid, and honestly, there's not a lot of work going on in Miami either, so Panerai kind of makes sense, right? It's casual, it's got that whole sporty vibe and feel about it. Typically, you see a guy getting out of some type of, high-end SUV when he's wearing the Panerai, compared to some of the more dressier watches in the list. And it's not that flashy either, but it is big and chunky, so it does attract a certain type of buyer. That's just something I've noticed, but I think that Panerai really does fit like kind of the alternative vibe of the city. I'd say that in Miami there's a bit of a sporty but still high-end feel to it. But then on the other side, there's another side of Miami that's very in-your-face, flashy, showy, and Panerai doesn't necessarily fit that bill most of the time. So guys, hopefully this has been kind of interesting. I've just noticed that watches on this list I just see more frequently, and just Miami's a bit of a watch city, especially with all the stores and boutiques for watches. So I wanted to share that with you. For those of you that have either not been to Miami, or perhaps you didn't take notice when you've been here, so you'd want to hear this from someone like me that does live here. Anyway, guys, it's Monday. I've got to get back to work. Have a great week. You have been chatting with John P. Ciao.